Don't you feel like you're reading the same story when you read Genesis 19 and Judges 19?
Um, you're referring to the one where it's talking about in Genesis 19, where it's the destruction of Sodom, and then the other one where it's referring to a man with a concubine and such.
Right.
And yeah, I don't see that being the same. I don't get that
Okay, so
because I mean they're two completely different
no,
contexts and different
guys come
stories.
in the house. Guys come in the house. The guy who owns the house has his well, it was either his daughter or concubine, so
Okay.
some woman. He offers the woman to the person. Like
Okay.
don't don't harm these guests I have. Just
Okay.
take them.
hmm
So doesn't that seem strange to you?
No, it does not, because I mean there's other texts and other things that are like that, but yeah, we don't have a problem with that.
Even scholars note the similarities.
Just like the scholars note the similarities in certain figures between Jesus and other figures as well.
No scholar
Doesn't
will
mean,
tell you that.
yeah, that would actually.
Those aren't scholars.
They are actually, because they're even conservative Christian scholars that note this, but they don't say that that means that Jesus was a ripoff or a you know that he was a plagiarism of another person. Just because there are similarities in certain instances doesn't mean that means that he got it from somewhere. It's kind of like how Tecton TV points it out one time that okay, someone tried to use the argument that because someone said the God of the Bible is all knowing, well, here's another God that claims to be all knowing. That means the God of the Bible borrowed from that concept because they couldn't comprehend an all-knowing God without borrowing from that particular world. So just because there are slight similarities doesn't automatically mean that that's the case. In fact, if you were to think about a historical perspective, you can go and look up different things in history over the years, and you will find much similarities in how certain things happen and also certain fights. For example, you have one year um, the let's say I'm just gonna say something here. The Packers versus um, the Falcons in football. They play one year in 1980, and then they play another year in 2016, and then another year in 2020. Now they have different scores, and will have different players on. They'll have different ways that the game went. But someone said, "Well, um, first of all, they're all playing against each other at the same team. There's one or two plays that may be the same exact thing, and someone could say, "Well, don't you find that kind of strange that there's these games that yet they have the same identical thing that happened here?" Uh, I just don't believe that this game actually happened because it's borrowing from a past game. So you can have something like that that goes on. But the fact is that the idea of what they did, people go.
These weren't common events. Like there's
Well, actually,
even
actually, it was. Actually, it quite very much was a common
actually
event
in
that happened.
no in Judges it says that this event was unlike any other because after the man defiled the concubine and then killed her,
Yeah,
the owner of the concubine hacked her to pieces and sent a piece of her body part to each of the 12 tribes of Israel, so they
yeah,
would go to war with this one guy.
right. That part was unlike the others. But what happened of the defiling and the fact that all these men were saying, "Bring her out," so that we may have sex with her, or in the case of the person, or in the
The man saying,
hold on, and then in the case of Sodom, where it said, "Bring these angels out." Well, they didn't see them as angels, but bring these men out so that we may have sex with them. This was a common thing that happened in certain cultures in the ancient Near East, especially within Canaanite religion based societies, in which it was based off of intimidation. So, in other words, when someone would go out, they would say, "Okay, you, sir, or woman, if you were new to the town, if you were brand new, you had to learn your place, basically, according to them, and that meant that you would be beaten, or in the case that happened, gang raped." And this was basically like in a similar situation, a gang initiation in modern gangs today, but instead, this is being initiated into the society. as in trying to show that, you're new, learn your place, or try to fight and survive and be like where we're at. So this was a common thing that happened at that particular time. So it's not that they're trying to, there's not that, there's nothing weird or strange about it. This was a common thing that happened. And in fact, it was even much more crazier in war. Sometimes in war, some of these Canaanite-based or other societies in the ancient Near East, when they win a battle, they humiliate the other enemy by basically trying to make them feel like a female POW and rape her as soon as they already captured and rounded up the surviving prisoners of war in that battle. So this idea that of what they did, of defiling the people or trying to, that was a common thing that happened back then.
The way he said it, take my girl, so but leave these men alone. These men, these guests they had.
Right. He was trying to offer his daughters up, of which Lot, by the way, that action wasn't something that God gave a thumbs up on, in case you ask about that. Lot was
nobody was venerated in Hebrews for he was called righteous.
Right, righteous by faith, but that action wasn't. Just like with the action that happened with Jephthah, his sacrifice on the daughter wasn't a righteous thing, but yet by faith was he declared righteous.
I wouldn't really call that faith, because
of course that's not that's treated. Not faith.
No, he treated Yahweh like it was just an ordinary Canaanite god.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really faith,
based on what we just saw in that particular text. But there could have been something throughout his life that we could have seen where he's still considered a hero of faith.
But we don't see examples of that.
Right, because we don't have the full biography of Jephthah.
Or Samson, for that matter.
Or most of the biblical characters. So, I mean, I don't see what's strange or odd with Genesis 19 and Judges 19. There are stories that happened and occurred. So,
yeah.
I mean, is there any more that you want to go over concerning that? Because you sound like that's not satisfactory to your concerning your answer.
No, I'll look more into it.
Okay.